how to pass your ACCA SBR examination, going through in this video the key topic areas you must know for your examination. And I'm delighted to be joined by top tutor Joe, who's going to walk and talk us through all of those key areas. So Joe, feel free to introduce yourself.
Hi everybody, I'm Jo Tuffle and I'm the SBR tutor at FME Learn Online, and I'm here to tell you all I know about your SBR exam.
Well, we are going to get kicked off straight away. Let's go to question number one, Joe. In the SBR exam, some students might do it first. You might recommend other ways of going about this exam. But what can they expect in question number one, topic areas?
Well, question number one is always the group accounting question. And you're given a pre-populated spreadsheet to make adjustments on. You never have to do a full consolidation anymore. That's an FR type question. In SBR, the consolidation's already done. So you'll either be given a profit or loss, a statement of financial position, or a cash flow statement. And there's going to be some errors and you need to correct them, but you also need to write about them. And so let's be clear here, it's not just a calculation question. Maximum 14 marks for calculations. The rest of the marks will be coming from writing about it and advising. And there's a clear way of having to do that. You need to be very precise and to the point, and no waffle, please. It's all about answering the requirement. Yeah.
Completely agreeing.
So it can be a statement of financial position, which most people like. Profit and loss slightly harder because you may have to deal with the NCI issue. And obviously with the cash flow statement, that's the horror of all horrors. Nobody wants that one. So you need to practice. And I know a cash flow statement came up last sitting.
Right, on there. So last sitting, which one are we referring to then?
June 25.
Okay. Well, it's got to be when a student opens, well, or clicks the computer-based examination, whatever shows up, profit and loss, statement of financial position, or cash flow, you've got to be prepared for all three. And am I right in saying everything gets marked on the spreadsheet and on the word processor? Is that sort of how you base it for your students?
Yeah, so you get two responses, obviously, the spreadsheet and the word processor. And my recommendation is to make sure you do all your workings in the spreadsheet and refer to them in the word processor, referencing working one. This is the goodwill calculation. Do no more than that, because otherwise you're going to be double counting your time and double counting your effort. Just as a point, in the SBR exam, we do have foreign subsidiaries. So there could be a foreign subsidiary issue where you need to translate or know the rules for translating foreign subsidiaries into presentational currencies. So it is a big syllabus for question one, and it's all up for grabs, I'm afraid.
Not to put anyone off the SBR exam, but it is also worth noting one of the reasons why students will fail the SBR exam is they spend way too much time on question one. They do that one first, and they've not done enough practice questions to time under exam conditions. So make sure you get that down in your notes, guys, on there. But say
60 minutes max. Absolutely.
Spot on, Joe. Otherwise, you're just not going to have enough time, because we've got to come on to questions 2, 3, and 4, especially question 4. Lots of students really don't write enough on there. But let's bring it back to question number 2. Thank you very much for that, Joe, for question number 1. But question number 2, what can a student expect for the topic area there?
So the main topic area there is ethics. And so there's 20 marks going, and half of the marks will be on ethics. Now, you might have to write about ethics from the scenario given, where they've got some accounting issues, or they're probably doing some inappropriate behaviours, shall we say. Now, they're not always inappropriate, so you have to be really clear about this. Sometimes it may just be competence, shall we say, rather than unethical behaviour. But the point is, you need to be able to link the ethical principles to the issues. You can't just cite all the ethical principles, this is what's going on in the scenario, without linking them to where the issue in the scenario is. And those will then get you the professional marks.
Right.
So the other 10 marks tends to be accounting issues and explaining why it's an accounting issue. And then 10 marks goes specifically on the ethical principles.
Right. Absolutely spot on. So in layman's terms, for a student who's just looking at the SBR exam, you've heard of integrity, confidentiality. These are just some of the ethical principles. You can't just write them down and say, oh, there's some integrity issue here. The key word of application to the scenario and then also explaining it is a key exam technique for question number 2. Otherwise, if you don't do that, am I right in thinking, Joe, you've not got much chance of picking up on the big marks?
No, and also sometimes they only ask for what ethical principles are at issue here. But sometimes they also ask for the actions you should take. And we don't want those actions to be generic. The classic one is report it to the ACCA. Now, you can say that, but you need to say which ethical issue is worth reporting to the ACCA. Because in the first instance, it may just be something that could be negotiated or taught between the finance director and the accountant, or it can be something that's sent to the non-exec directors, or it may be something so fundamental that you really should be seeking legal advice. So it's having an appropriate action as well also gives you the professional marks.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. That would definitely be in my notes. In this SBR exam, if you write generically, especially when we're going to come on to questions 3 and 4, that is not what they're looking for. It's the specific areas applying back to the scenario. And I always used to like to use some of the keywords in the requirement to shape my answer so that when the marker was reading it, they go, this person has really read the requirement, and it really focused in my answer on there as well. But that's great, Joe, on there. What about question number 3? We're getting on to the fun parts now on here, or the areas that students don't maybe think is the most fun area of SBR.
So question 3 has been highlighted by the examining team as the most underperforming question. And the reason will be because of breadth of knowledge. So you can't cherry pick these IFRSs. It's all about 4 or 5 different scenarios or exhibits, could be asking about different IFRSs. And some of the scenarios can be a combination of IFRSs. Now, they've tried to make it easier for you because they used to be like, oh, what? Let's make a stab, it's that one. Let's make a stab, it's that one. But now in the requirements, they particularly say which IFRS, according to IFRS 15 revenue with customers, you apply this knowledge. Yeah. And so it's having a breadth of all the IFRSs, and that includes all the ones which are tested at FR, not just SBR. And so that you're in the best kept, you've got the best equipped knowledge to apply to those scenarios. Yeah. So do not look at every IFRS that's examinable, please.
Exactly. We've all been there looking through some past paper questions and you're thinking, oh my word, this question was on deferred tax, or it could be on something like revenue recognition or other tricky ones like financial instruments. And you're there going, oh, I'm sure it won't come up. And then lo and behold, on the exam day, 10 marks. Oh, has it happened to your students before, Joe?
Absolutely. So somebody said to me, I have no idea. It actually happened in my mock. They said to me, how does that have any relevance to financial liability? I would never have thought about financial liability. And I went, well, it was in the requirement. And he went, what? I said, there we go. Didn't read the requirement. You know, I know you wouldn't have thought about it being a financial liability, but because it was in the requirement, you just needed to make a couple of sentences referencing why you don't think it's a financial liability.
Absolutely spot on.
So it's just having some sort of exam technique using using the requirements to help you and sitting back and thinking about the basic knowledge that you've gained of every IFRS and applying it to that scenario in a very precise and basic way. You know, ultimately, when you look at something, they've asked you to look at it in accordance with property, plant and equipment. It's knowing that it's an attributable cost that you can capitalize. That keyword will then get a mark. You know, you say this is this item is an attributable cost, tick, because you've used the scenario, the item in the scenario, and you've used the standard to help you say it's PPE. And then you've got to think about all the other things which come up in that PPE standard. How do you depreciate it? Are you going to revalue it? Is it ultimately going to be something else, move into being an investment property? Is it under construction? Could there be borrowing costs? It's all about using the knowledge of what an asset, which potentially is a property, could end up being. So it's not, you know, they don't want you to be just very prescriptive on it. You've got to think around the transaction and what it could be.
Yeah, all the details. Imagining if you're speaking with a client and they're thinking about buying this investment property or whatever it may be, and that's where you've got to go through all those points you mentioned are the things that will come up in the mark scheme on there as well. But I mean, what are we thinking for question number 4, Jo, as well? This is like the last point in the exam for most students. They're getting a bit tired. What can they expect in question number 4?
Well, question 4 tends to be the investor's perspective question. And therefore, there's 2 professional marks going. So it's a little bit like question 2, in that it's a 25 marker question, but there's 23 marks going for the technical application aspects, and then 2 marks for the linkage, making sure you've taken it from the investor's perspective. Now, what they mean from an investor's perspective is not necessarily a shareholder. Sometimes they'll ask you it from another stakeholder's perspective, which could be a finance provider, that sort of thing. So you've got to be careful about what they're asking you. But horror of horrors, they have also been in the past. I can think of 2 questions in the past. One was all about leases, all about sale and lease back. And then one was all about whether it's a operating lease. Not operating. One was whether it's a short-term lease, whether they should take a loan or whether they should lease it. And it was all to do with cars. So they can be very specific on one IFRS in that question 4. Yeah. And in the past, they've examined the tax reconciliation, the tax disclosure note. In the past, the recent exams have looked at judgments in IFRS. You know, nothing the students would have expected. But the thing is, if you hold on to your knowledge and you think through the question, don't panic. Most of the answers in the question, in the scenario, because they're asking you to critique something. Well, you look through and look for critiques. Classic one was sustainability. We had a sustainability question. Lots of students haven't revised sustainability standards. There was a technical article, which this question was based on. But when I looked at the question, in the scenario, it said, please assess this disclosure note under sustainability standards, you know, for an investor. So when you're writing your answer, you need to also say, for an investor, every time you come up with a critique, does it match the sustainability standards for an investor? And the classic one is it said 11 months. This has been done for 11 months, right? Well, common sense tells you that's not right. It should be there for 12 months. Even though, you know, you may not have revised the sustainability standards, but you said it should be for a year. Yeah, it's quite obvious that that's an error, isn't it? So you therefore know. So it's not panicking and thinking, oh, I can do this. I haven't done sustainability, but having a go. Often, you're a capable accountant and show the examining team that you can do this.
Absolutely on there. And are there any areas that maybe are a bit new to the syllabus or things that students should be especially looking forward into the September 2025 and forward sittings? Are there any particular areas that you would want to highlight?
Yeah, well, so there is a big major change to financial reporting, which now is now going to be tested across all the papers now. It affects all the papers, but obviously SBR it will affect the most because it's a standard. And they've introduced IFRS 18,
Hmm.
presentation of financial statements. And basically it replaces IAS 1. It amends IAS 8, which is accounting policies, and it also amends slightly IAS 7, which is cash flow statements.
Hmm.
And so it's pretty pervasive because the main effect is the profit and loss and how we categorize things and we total things. Yeah.
Hmm.
It also introduces management defined performance measures and disclosure requirements for that. And there is enhanced requirements for understanding when we aggregate items and disaggregate them. And then also how we classify things as current and non-current, although that hasn't changed very much, to be fair. And then it clarifies when we're allowed to offset or not things. So it's pervasive, shall we say, and will affect FR and SBR in more detail than obviously the other exams. Yeah.
Oh, spot on. So definitely something to be keeping on top of with they'll probably release a technical article on it. There might be a sort of debrief on there as well. But that's
Yeah,
absolutely fantastic, Joe.
absolutely. You know, the examining team have said there is going to be a technical article. It should be up there this week. I checked on Monday and it hadn't put up that then, but this week I'm hoping it's going to be up, which is we're now in obviously mid-June time.
Yeah, but it'll be up there. But what I can do for the SBR students watching is I can link it down below in the description, along with all of your details, Joe, because those are the fundamental areas of the SBR exam. So I just want to say a massive thank you for coming on and sharing all those insights. Do you have any final words of wisdom or best of luck for the students?
Well, absolutely best of luck, honestly, and really do plan your studies. Have a ACCA mindset. You know, what you need is need to have an intention that you are going to pass, and you need to have a positive attitude. Yeah, and attention, i.e., getting your plan in place to pass. So don't just think, right, I'm just going to leave it till 4 weeks before. The SBR syllabus is vast,
Mm.
and little and often getting your notes together, i.e., the points about every IFRS that you're going to need on a crib sheet. So you use it when you do questions, and then that crib sheet will go into your head and you won't need it anymore. So it's really understanding as you go and practicing, and make sure your mindset is there, and you will pass SBR because you've practiced and you put the performance in place to do that.
Oh, what a lovely note to end the recording on there, Joe. That's absolutely fantastic. Well, guys, we'll put all the details, as I said, down in the description. Best of luck with your examination and enjoy your SBR journey.